Cool.
Hey, welcome everybody to the Cognitive Fitness Coach podcast. Once again, thanks for push and play. I'm super stoked to be here today with Filiz. Ündemir. I had to pause because I knew I was going to mess it up, and I may have, but Filiz is very gracious and kind to us all, and she allows us all to say her name however we feel comfortable. Filiz, how are you
Whatever works. Yeah, sure.
doing? Whatever works for you.
I'm doing great. It's so good to see you, Chris. I'm doing awesome. How are you doing?
I'm great. Thank you so much. Yeah, it's good to be seen. I've said it before, it's always better to be seen than be viewed. Been my saying
Mm,
in the last couple podcasts. So yeah, I'm
hmm
super grateful to be here. And I'm super grateful that you came on all the way from Utah. And what isn't technology amazing? Here we are. I'm all the way in Thailand at 5 o'clock in the morning. And what time is it in Utah right now?
It's 3 p.m.
Oh, nice. Oh, well, thank you so much. This is like the middle of your day. Oh my God. Wow.
Yep,
So,
all
hey,
good.
yeah. Hey, everybody. Filiz is a LCSW. For anyone who doesn't know what an LCSW is, that is a licensed clinical social worker. And she comes to us today with a wealth of knowledge in therapy. So, Filiz recently achieved certification in psychedelic-assisted therapy, which I'm super excited to talk about because I don't know much about it, but I know it's like gaining more and more traction. And I know from the little bit I have seen that there is a lot of efficacy there for clients. And I'm really excited to talk about that. And we're also going to talk about trauma therapy, and we're going to talk about the nuances of EMDR, which is eye movement desensitization and reprocessing. And for whatever reason, whenever I say EMDR, I always want to say EDMR, which would be electric dance music revolution, but that's not. Thank you for that. That's not it. So, without further ado, let's talk to Filiz. Filiz, tell us a little about yourself. Where are you from? Where's your background? What is the origin of Filiz?
Oh, the origin of Filiz. Well, so my parents are Turkish immigrants. I'm first generation American, and I was born in Flushing, Queens, New York. Um, yeah, I think you're a New Yorker as well, right?
I am. I'm from
Yeah.
upstate New York. You got it, Albany. Yeah.
Okay. Right on. Yeah, so I grew up in Queens. I'm the youngest of three girls. I mean, when I was 9 years old in like the middle of third grade, yeah, April in third grade, we moved on up to it was just a little more upstate from where we were in Rockland County, New York, and yeah, what a difference it was there from Queens for sure. Um, yeah, and I don't know, my journey, like I've just kind of bopped around a bit living wise. Not as much as you, Chris, but like for my undergrad, I went to James Madison University in Virginia for my graduate, my master's program. I went back to New York at NYU, and then I've lived in, Japan where we've met, and now I'm in Utah. So, here we are. That's the background mostly. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, that's cool. So, yeah, yeah, I was just reminiscing about the first time we met actually, and we met in Japan on a United States Air Force base, and I was there for literally like I don't know, it was like my first or second night there. And unbeknownst to me and my wife, we didn't realize at the time that we were moving to the snowiest Department of Defense base in the world. It literally gets like 10 meters of snow every year. And I was like shocked that people were still moving about like in these nasty snowstorms. So yeah, Feliz, if you don't mind me mentioning it, is like we're both in recovery from substance use disorders, alcohol use disorders, and uh, I didn't realize that I was communicating with Feliz via a I think it was Facebook page or something, right?
Mm.
For a recovery group there, and Filiz was nice enough to come and pick me up like in the night in this snowstorm, and I got in this car, and I was like, "Whoa, this thing is sketchy," and the roads were sketchy. And she took me to a fellowship meeting the very like this first or second night I was there, and I was like, "All right, like." And anyone who's at home listening, they knows the deal. Like when you're in recovery and you find your people, you're like, okay, like everything's gonna be okay. Like
Mhm.
this is the snowiest place in the world. My family is a little upset with me right now that we picked these orders. Yeah, but everything's gonna be okay because I found my people. So yeah, that's really cool. And yeah,
Yeah.
so with that
Yeah,
Feliz,
just
I always have a special place in my heart when I think of think of Japan and I think of being in recovery. I'm like, I remember Feliz and that car ride. But go ahead, what were you saying? I
right.
need to cut you
Yeah,
off.
no, I was just about to say that like I got that message because I was the one running the Facebook page because like I was the only one there really doing the meeting or the only one showing up, right? And so I remember getting your message and I'm like, yeah, I don't know who this guy is, but I'm gonna pick him up and we're gonna go to a meeting. And you're just
Yeah.
like standing in the middle of a parking lot and I'm like, I think that's the guy, maybe. And I get you. And I don't even know if anyone was at the meeting besides the two of us. But that was a really cool time.
Yeah, and the meeting was like in like a broom closet. The room was like, I'm in my office room right now in my house. It was literally like, it was so small.
Yeah.
You could smell each other. It was a really small room, but yeah, it was cool. And you're right, like it was a very small community and it wasn't going, but you were keeping it going. So that was really cool. Yeah, it was really cool. So let's talk a little bit
Yeah.
about that. Like so what is your journey like? So, I mean, if you pick me up in the middle of a parking lot for a 12-step meeting, that means that you must have some experience yourself and mental health challenges and such. Would you mind telling us a little bit about what your journey's been like to go from perhaps client to clinician? What has that been like?
Yeah, for sure. Um, so I was thinking about this earlier today, like what has been the path of me and where did when did mental health stuff begin coming into my life and the progression of that and everything. And I was thinking like, oh, when I was in elementary school in Queens, I was just like killing it. I was friends with everyone. It felt so good to be kind and bubbly and outgoing and everything. And I realized that once we made the move, upstate during third grade, like I was immediately bullied. I was like I was a minority in Queens, but in like a great way where we all just got along and it was awesome. But then I was some sort of minority in Pearl River, New York, where it was very Irish Catholic, and I was this like Turkish girl or whatever. They've never heard of Turkey before. So I was immediately bullied for that. And there just slowly or maybe quickly became like a disconnect from for me between people and just not feeling like I fit in at all. Oh, my earphone's falling out. Um, like I started beginning to notice that I I was just totally different from people, not only from the outside, but also like in my brain as well. It seemed like everyone's answers to questions in class, like they would raise their hands and they would be saying numbers, and I felt like my answers were colors, and I was like, what is going, like, why am I dumb here? Like, what is happening? What is the disconnect here between me and all of these other people? And I couldn't really understand it. And although I had some very few great friends, I felt just again like an outsider. And through that journey, I became really depressed. I was a very depressed middle schooler. Like in sixth grade, I remember that was the first time I wanted to kill myself or just not be on this earth because I just felt like I didn't belong in any sort of way at home, at school, like nowhere. So that was a really confusing time for me. Um, yeah, and moving forward, like I would say that that depression maintained until I was in my mid 20s or so. And truly, I would say that mostly, I would say mostly in middle school, going into high school, like I truly believe that I would kill myself one day. Like that
Mm,
would be how I would die by my own hand. Just believing that, things weren't ever going to get better for me. And so, my love affair began with drinking when I was introduced to alcohol by, my older sister.
mm,
Um, I loved it, the feeling of being altered in this way and, feeling like I could once again, like, be outgoing and be myself. And, like it felt so awesome. And I wanted to keep that going. And so I did. Um, yeah, and it didn't really get too bad until college. But of course, like you see the tendencies in high school and you're like, oh, that's not great. You shouldn't be
yeah.
you shouldn't be sharing a 30 rack with your best friend and your big not
Mm.
awesome. Um, but yeah, like in college, that's where I really soared with my drinking. And it just became this in this way that like I was doing things that I would never do if I were sober, or I was doing things that were against my morals. I no longer liked, I mean, I didn't already like who I was, but I didn't even like who I was drunk anymore, which was
Yeah.
a huge bummer, right? Um, and I just remember that one night after like repeating my patterns with drinking and just like repeatedly just sinking into self-hatred, I realized like, oh, if I keep drinking, I'm going to keep doing these things and I'm just going to get worse. This right now is the best I have ever been in my entire life, and this is the best I will ever be in my
Oh,
entire life. And or at least for the future. And with that thought, I was like, okay, well, I can't get worse, so I'm just going to get better.
nice.
And so I went to, it wasn't my first ever AA meeting, but it was my last first one,
Mm,
where I was then, I was silent for most of the time, but there was a speaker there, and I had never approached anyone before in an AA meeting, but I approached the speaker at that meeting at the end of it, and I just said, "Hey, I've been sober for 6 hours. I don't know what I'm doing here." My
yeah.
earphone just fell out. I
Oh,
don't
it's
know
all
what I'm
good.
doing here. And she just took me under her wing and said, "Okay, yeah, let's go to a meeting tomorrow together. Here's my number."
Nice.
And yeah, that was kind of just where I went, where I did all the things, I took all the suggestions, I, eventually, started meetings, led meetings, did all these
Mm.
commitments and stuff, and like I was really engaged with the program.
That's amazing. So you got sober through 12 steps in you like, I mean, did you also seek professional help as well at any point, or was it all 12 steps?
Oh yeah, so I mean, of course, I totally missed that part. I was just focused on AA
It's
here.
okay. It's okay.
Um, Yeah, when I was 16, I started going to, actually I was 15, soon to be 16. I went to my first therapist that I
Okay.
like stuck with.
Nice.
Yeah, and be like getting that sort of attention from her, and working closely with her about like what was happening for me, and my experience and my thoughts and my feelings, and just this person that would just listen to me. Wow, that's
Mm,
amazing. I never had that before.
mm,
Um, she she is part of why, or a big reason why I wanted to be a therapist, because I wanted other people to feel seen and heard.
mm. That's cool.
Hmm.
May I ask,
Yeah.
like, what type of modalities did you dive into in your own practice? Was it like CBT or DBT, or was it straight up like talk therapy, or was there, I don't know, psychodrama, or like would you be comfortable in talking about that, or?
Yeah, like so just from receiving therapy, you mean?
Yeah, yeah, from being
Oh, yeah,
the
yeah.
client. Yeah.
hmm Yeah, I mean, some of it was mostly it was just straight up talk therapy,
Yeah.
with, some CBT and DBT in there.
Mhm.
But it was a pretty eclectic approach where I couldn't even really tell you what it was. It was mostly just like talking.
Yeah. I mean, yeah.
hmm
So, I mean, yeah, the therapists I've been around, it seems like as I've had one tell me, like, they're like, I just like do sessions and then like in retrospect, they kind of think about like what they were applying during that session. And they don't even like think about it at the time. It's not like they go in there and be like, all right, today I'm going to do CBT and that's what we're going to do. Um,
Sure.
so I
Yeah,
think that comes with
totally.
experience. I'm probably more at the level of like, today we're going to do CBT. But
Right.
yeah, cool. So yeah, what an amazing journey. So how long have you been in recovery now? Like how long ago was that? If you said you got in like pretty early, you got into sobriety, right?
Yeah, that was so I was 20 years old. That was August 25th, 2012.
Oh wow. Okay. Cool.
Yeah, yeah. So that was cool.
Yeah, that's cool.
Um,
That's good. I mean, we probably wouldn't be having this conversation today if you didn't, that's for sure. So like I don't know if you drank anything like I drank, like it wasn't gonna last much longer. So
right.
yeah,
Yeah.
awesome. So you get into school. How was school for you? How was your master's program? Was it difficult? Was it fun? Was it uh arduous? Was it terrible? I don't
I loved my master's program. Our classes weren't too big, and at least where I was, it was through NYU, but it was like a different location where we could go if like we didn't want to drive to the city. So that
know.
was nice. And Yeah, I loved it. Finally, I was doing classes that I felt really passionate about,
Mm,
versus like undergrad where I mean, I liked my psych major, but doing all the other kind of classes that are just fillers in a way,
mm.
I wasn't super interested. And so like I loved my master's program. I met some great people, did some cool internships. Um, yeah, and it just like really geared me to be a therapist in the best way that I wanted to be.
That's amazing. What talk to me about your internships. What internships did you do?
Yeah, it's so funny because my internships were like adolescent, teenager focused, and I like don't work with that population at all. It's not that like I actually always wanted to like work in a school where like I was a depressed kid, I needed some, extra attention and connection, and I wanted to be able to give that to, you know, them. So my first internship was actually with the Department of Social Services,
Oh.
um, working with like family services with like kids who they were missing too much of school, I
Mm,
guess. And so then the school would call the Department of Social Services to work with the families.
mm,
And that was fine. I got to like work with that. It was a really interesting sort of place to do an internship. But my
mm,
second one was in an alternative high school in Englewood, New Jersey,
mm,
and I just worked directly with high school kids, kind of did some counseling with them, helped them with like goals and college kind of stuff if that was a possibility.
mm.
And yeah, that was a really interesting experience where like, I was the school was primarily black students, black teachers, and here I am like just this little intern where they're like, I'm not gonna fucking listen to this person. Who are you?
Right, right. What do you know
Yeah,
about my
so
experience? Right.
exactly. Yeah. And so that was kind of hard to adjust to. Like it was hard for them to get to like to trust me.
Hmm.
But it turned out to be like such a beautiful time, really.
Yeah, that's awesome. And
Yeah.
so when did you do your graduate program? Because because I obviously it was after I met you, but then I think you were like were you getting clinical hours when I met you in Japan? Because weren't you doing some stuff with family advocacy or behavioral health or something there on base as well when I met you?
hmm
Yeah. Is that what you were
Yeah, so
trying
I did
to do?
my grad
Right.
program.
Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry.
No, 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 it's okay.
Yeah. I did my grad program 2014 to 2016. And then I was living in Japan from the end of 2016 to end of 2019. And there I was working at the mental health clinic as basically an intern doing sessions with people trying to get my clinical hours.
Gotcha. Yeah. So that's an interesting well, it's interesting for me to think about that time for you because I feel like I'm in that time right now as well. Like I just wrapped up my master's program in December. Now here it's
Yeah.
only January, but I'm like bouncing off the walls, like trying to figure out like how do I apply everything I've learned and how do I get busy. But at the same time, as you can tell, I'm also wearing a Hawaiian shirt and flip flops, so I don't want to be too busy. You know,
Yeah.
having plenty of off time is really important to me nowadays too. Um, so it's like, yeah, it's interesting. Did you have that experience? You got done, and now you're not in the Air Force, right? I should say, but your husband is in the Air Force, right? And that's how you end up in Japan. So are you like it? That must have been a pretty interesting time for you, where you're like, like, what am I doing, and what can I do here? You know, how can I get busy?
Yeah, totally. Like, being in Japan, it was really hard where like, they don't have therapy there off of base, and it wouldn't have counted for my hours anyway, I don't think. And, being in on this basically remote base and trying to find work and, feeling like I'm behind with, compared to um, all my classmates and everything, the people in my cohort. That was a really rough time until I was able to finally work on that in that mental health clinic and be able to accumulate some hours. Something I should probably tell you is that like a ton has changed since we've parted. Like I'm not married anymore.
Okay.
Like there's a lot that has shifted for sure. And so I'm just gonna put that out there.
Okay.
We're
Yeah. Yeah.
great
No. Cool.
friends. We're
Cool.
just not
Yeah.
married.
Yeah, I realized like some things had changed in your life, and I didn't know how much we wanted to talk about that. But I do follow you on like Facebook, and I see things going on, and I'm like, man, it looks like yeah, things have definitely changed. And that's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. Did you want to talk about that at all?
Yeah.
Is okay? Well, so tell me what
Yeah.
what have been these big shifts in with Filiz? Because I've noticed some shifts for you. One thing I'll
Yeah,
say this though is
totally.
I notice hasn't changed is you're still like jacking weights because you look pretty fit. Yeah, look at this. This will be released on video. So yeah, Filiz is like you look like you've been throwing around the weights. So good for you. So
Yeah.
tell us what has changed. What has changed in your personal life, if that's okay.
Yeah, totally. So, when I moved to Utah, um, of course, AA has been a huge part of my mental health recovery and journey, but it goes so much beyond that. Where actually, when I moved to Utah, it was March 2020, and everything was shut down, right? So
Mm.
like there were some Zoom meetings, and honestly, like I went to a couple of them, but it wasn't really working for me. So I didn't go to meetings for a long time.
Mm.
Um, for
Uh-oh.
some time. Are we good?
Yeah, we broke up. I'll edit it later on. But yeah, we're good. So
Okay.
continue.
Okay. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Just time where I wasn't going to meetings, I was just kind of finding myself in a different way. And the more I was really paying attention to myself and growing into my own with like, working full time at a treatment center and being a therapist there, and like becoming more confident in myself in different ways. Um, I started noticing like, oh, like I'm not really dissociated from myself. I'm way more present, and I'm realizing like, me and my husband are great pals, but that's the extent of it, right?
Mm.
And for me, like actually, I like women. Oh, okay, that's a surprise. All right. something that I wasn't really aware of before. And so, making a hard decision of like, I love this person, I don't want to hurt them, but also I think I'm doing the better thing by not staying with them, because they deserve somebody who adores them and wants to be with them in that way, and I'm just not that person, right? So then moving from there, like moving from this livelihood of the Air Force, being living on base and having our dogs and a house and all this stuff and healthcare and everything that's taken care of from the Air Force, right? And me just leaving it, you know, figuring out my own place, moving to Salt Lake City from the military base up north, and moving, another step in my sort of journey in this
Yeah.
life.
Wow. Yeah, that's a lot. That's a lot going on.
Yeah.
Wow, good for you for like, I mean,
Yeah.
discovering and, honoring your authentic self. I mean, that's
Hmm.
amazing. So yeah, I wasn't exactly sure how it all went down, and I was like, well, I don't think it's like any of my business to like send you a DM to be like, hey, what's going on here? I noticed I see you with this girl an awful lot. I mean, I figured that like that you're all were romantically connected as well, but I don't know. For some reason
Right.
I thought you were maybe still married and it was like this open relationship thing going on there in Utah or
Sure.
something.
When in Utah, right?
I guess. I mean, you could have multiple partners in Utah, I guess.
Hmm.
To all my Utah listeners, no. I'm
No.
sorry. For being silly, all right? But yeah, that's cool. And talk to me about Utah because I love Utah. If I didn't come to Thailand, it was in the cards that I was gonna get out and move to Utah. And I was actually looking at
Hmm.
like St. George area because it's close to Bryce and it's close to Zion. And I was like, yeah, I was like, almost had a completely different path. And is I was gonna go to Southern Utah University because they have a bachelor's program there that where you can get your helicopter license, helicopter pilot's
Hmm.
license, and then I actually know someone that took that path, and now they were flying helicopters around the skyline of New York City.
Oh,
But yeah,
cool.
but anyway, yeah, it is cool. But talk to me about your Utah experience. How has it been?
Yeah. I love living in Salt Lake City. I think it is so awesome. Where I am is in Sugar House. Um, this cute little t city, and it's like 6 to 8 minutes from downtown. It's like 12 minutes from the airport, and then like 15 minutes from the mountains, so it's just like the best little spot ever. What a gem.
Yeah,
And I love it here because of the access to like a small little downtown area, and also like, wow, the freaking mountains here, like it is
right.
so impressive here. Yeah, like you're flying in and you just see like walls and walls of mountains, and it hasn't gotten old so far, and I don't think it will.
Yeah,
Um, it's just the accessibility, just it's so easy to get there. And then the further south you go, or in any direction that you go, like there's different terrain, and it is breathtaking, right? Like the red rocks and the desert, like that is insane. And then the alpine, like all of that,
yeah,
it's pretty special.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I used to get up super early in the morning and leave my house in Port Hueneme, California, and ride through the desert on my motorcycle at a pretty high rate of speed and make it to Bryce Canyon. I remember by lunch.
Oh, oh my God. Cool.
Yeah, yeah, I loved it out there. I literally had like these spiritual like gratitude experiences out in Utah where riding down scenic Route 12 on my motorcycle and just I remember just crying, like crying into my helmet of like how
Hmm.
beautiful it was and it just
Hmm.
reminded me of how like how did I get here? How did a guy like me end up having a life like this? Like it's amazing. And
Yeah, it is so
yeah.
special.
Yeah. And how we did it is we gave up our self-destructive maladaptive coping mechanisms, right? And we got into therapy and we got into a community, and I think that's what we did to get where we are. And so talk to me about therapy. What like how has it been to become a therapist, and what could someone expect if they came to you to for therapy? What could they expect from that?
Mm.
Mm,
Yeah, I have grown so much as a therapist, just within the past couple of years, I feel, with like learning about new modalities and leaning into what feels good for me versus, maybe what I'm being told to do by a certain, organization or something like that. So like I said, I previously worked at a treatment center, and now I work in a group private practice.
mm-hmm,
And it's been okay. What you can expect when you're, coming to me, sitting in my office,
mm-hmm,
uh, just so much acceptance,
mm,
like no judgment, all acceptance, in any way, in any form that you are coming to me.
mm,
Like yes, like just a full acceptance coming from me, and just like having the feeling that everything is okay, and in the way of like not everything is like good, but everything that you're coming with as you are is not good, not bad. It's just this is what it is. This is what your experience is. This is how your behaviors are. These are what your thoughts are. All of it, and it's like, okay, great. That's who you are.
mm-hmm.
Let's go with it.
Yeah.
Just that full acceptance is really important for me.
Yeah, for sure. And I think it's probably quite an amazing experience for clients to come in, and I think for some, it perhaps might be the first time in their lives where they've ever been maybe fully heard and like held in a space and had someone like hold that space with this non-judgmental space, you know? I think
Mhm.
oftentimes we may hold that back from others because of fear of judgment and such, you know? Have you
Mhm.
had that experience of people perhaps coming in and saying to you like, "I've never told anyone this before," and then get it out and such?
Mhm. Yeah. So many of them, right? I also see a lot of either current Mormons trying to leave the church or ex-Mormons, right? And so there's a lot that they entrust in me, telling me about things
Mhm.
of their life where they don't feel safe or comfortable telling anyone else,
Right.
right? And like what an honor to receive that. And I'm always telling them like wow, they're doing such hard things, and
Mm.
I'm so proud of them for coming to me and being able to just say everything without
Mhm.
knowing like how it's going to be received.
Right. And I'm sure there's so much therapeutic value in, and I don't want to say in just that, but in that is
Hmm.
getting things out there, right? It's just getting it out, like expressing it and getting it out into the world. Like that alone, there's like healing that happens there, you know? It reminds me of
Right.
like in the fellowship, the fifth step, you know, of admitting all our faults, you know, to someone. And it's like I
Hmm.
remember doing stuff. I remember doing that. I also remember I mean, I've been through therapy myself, and it's like just so therapeutic to get that stuff out into the world, just get it off my heart, boom. And now it's like it doesn't
Hmm.
have as much power over us, you know, when we get it out into the light. It seems to chop the knees out from underneath it in a lot of ways.
Hmm.
And so you work with a lot of trauma therapy too. Is there certain modalities you work with trauma? Like I know when I was doing my internship, I was doing like narrative exposure therapy, and or is EMDR part of the trauma therapy? I almost did it again.
Hmm.
So can you talk to us
Yeah.
a little bit about that?
Hmm. Yeah, I mostly around trauma, like I'll do EMDR with like some somatics in there. And
Mm,
I really enjoy doing internal family systems incorporated and EMDR as well. I just kind of like I like to use all these little tools in one, and whatever like feels good in flow, what feels right, what's coming up with them. Um, and so that's mostly what I would focus on as long as they're, wanting to do that.
Nice.
But I'm never like, yeah, we're doing this. It's always checking in with them to see like where they're at.
Right. And that's a big part of self-determination and fostering agency and autonomy in people and empowering people, right? Yeah,
Hmm.
that's awesome. Yeah. So if anyone is thinking about going to therapy and are nervous that your therapist is going to like make you do this and do this and do that, if you have a decent therapist, which hopefully you will, they probably won't be doing that type of stuff. So
Yeah.
a lot of times that's just yeah, it's just not true that they don't perhaps know what to expect. So I think it's a good conversation to have. So talk to me a little bit more about EMDR. Like, can you talk a little bit about like what does that look like? What is eye movement desensitization and reprocessing?
Yeah. So like there's so much to say about it, right? But in a nutshell,
Yeah.
um EMDR I mean, it could be used in a few different ways. It can be used immediately after a traumatic event. It could be used just to reprocess traumatic memory. Most of how I use it, even though I use it in those different ways, where I'm finding that I'm using it most often is in looking at negative beliefs that we have and
Hmm.
reprocessing memories that we have attached to those negative beliefs, and therefore kind of turning those beliefs around.
Hmm.
So, just explaining it a little bit further, we are little kids just bopping around, and suddenly, for example, something tells me that I'm not good enough.
Hmm.
Either directly or indirectly, I have the message that I'm not good enough. So
Hmm.
then, as I'm growing older, I start finding this validation everywhere, whether it's real or imagined, that I'm not good enough.
Right.
So then I have these memories attached to this belief now. And the neural pathways in my brain are just like, yeah, well, I'm not good enough because of look at all these reasons, right?
Hmm.
And so then when we're doing EMDR, we're looking at those memories, processing it with that negative belief. And because we're accessing both sides of the brain using bilateral stimulation, so that could be
Hmm.
eye movements, that could be tapping, that could be little buzzers in your hands, right? Just
Yeah.
accessing both sides of your brain, we're getting to a place where those memories are no longer attached to those beliefs. So then
Yeah.
it's like, oh, like I feel different. New neural pathways are being created, and it's really cool.
It's amazing. Really, yeah. Well done explaining that too. That's cool. I sometimes feel, and I don't know if I'm off here, but you're talking about so we call it eye movement, right? But as you said, like it can be tapping, it can be tactile. That's what I did. I like the little buzzers in my hands,
I
like I
like the
was
buzzers, yeah.
like get the good rhythm going. Do do do. Yep. And I feel as though like there's some EMDR stuff happening when I go for these runs, and I'm going left, right, left, right, left, right for
Yeah,
hours and hours on end, right? Um,
totally.
so when I was in my internship, I actually used that, and I created a thing. I called it walk, run, talk therapy, where I would take clients out and we would go for jogs down the Ping River in lovely Chiang Mai and just talk it out. And I thought it was pretty
Yeah,
therapeutic. Yeah,
I love
but
that. Yeah.
yeah, and I would always do it towards the end of my shift because there was no way I was going to be able to go back to work after that because I literally looked like I had taken a shower. It's so hot and humid that I was just like sweating like a madman. But yeah, cool. But yeah, that's awesome. And now I wanted so, and I think it's important to say is like like you talked about is like looking at these core beliefs and such and like what's underneath it all like so like we can do the work and and such like as far as like hey I don't drink, which is great. I get up and work out, which is great. I have a host of friends, which is great. I have a meditation practice, which is great. But would you agree that like if you don't address that underlying stuff that you may not still have the best mental fitness. Is that accurate to say?
For sure. Yeah. I mean, if we're thinking about like all of like us as a whole, as a system, we
Mhm.
need to incorporate the body too,
Oh
right? Like
yeah.
it's not just the mental part, even though that's how we retrieve and communicate information, right? Like our body it holds everything. It remembers every single thing that you've ever been through, right?
Yeah.
Not your brain.
Hmm.
So incorporating that as well, where EMDR could also be a somatic practice as well, where you're taking note of your body and everything. And that's how I also like to incorporate parts work. Have you heard of parts work or
No,
internal
I
family
haven't.
systems, IFS?
No, I don't.
Okay.
I haven't messed with IF. Yeah, I haven't messed with
Yeah.
that.
I won't go too deeply into that, just for time's sake, but it's kind of creating a practice of recognizing, how your body feels and connecting to different parts that come up within you and within your psyche and asking it questions. Not
Mm,
asking your not technically yourself questions, but asking these separate parts of you or these feelings in your body, right?
mm,
Tension or whatever. Asking them questions. And the idea is like believing your own inner healing intelligence, meaning
mm,
like your body remembers all these things. You can ask it questions and it will respond,
mm,
right? And then you can help take care of yourself by, just honoring what it has to
mm-hmm,
say. And I
mm-hmm.
know like that could be it's not necessarily a new idea, but I think it's really new for people in general to be like, oh, talk to my body, and that's kind of odd, you know.
Yeah, I'm like,
But
as you're
yeah.
going through this, I'm asking myself, like, well, Chris, what does your body need today? And I just did a 20K trail race yesterday, so my back is killing me, and I'm wondering, like, is my back killing me because of what happened to me when I was 12, or or what is my body telling me? Because it's as the famous book goes, the body keeps the score, right? So yeah, and I'm glad that you started to talk about that and using it in terms of somatic, so people. Like I remember when I first heard like someone was like, "Oh, I'm into SE," and I was like, "What is SE?" And they're like somatic experiences, and I was like, "Oh, yeah." And I didn't want to look dumb, so I acted like I knew what they were talking about, but I had to Google it later. Like what the heck is that?
Mhm.
So it's about the body. So when we say somatic, it's about the body. Um,
Mhm.
so what does that look like in therapy? Is it literally just like turning a person on to like, hey, your body keeps all this stuff in and like and addressing it? Like I know trauma like it tends to like change and get stored in the body. So how do you address
Mhm.
that in a session?
Yeah. So I am not a somatic therapist by any means. And there are so many different things that specifically somatic therapists do and use. Um, what I like to do is just have people kind of be aware of like how their body feels. Like, is there any tension? Is anything coming up? And connecting with that and seeing what is that about, right?
Yeah.
Um, sometimes when something is if we're thinking in terms of parts work, if we're thinking of fear or jealousy or something's coming up for somebody, I'll wonder like, oh, well, where in your body are you feeling that? A lot of people will feel things in
Mm-hmm.
their throat or their chest, and then so many things, but like you end up finding out like, oh, like what age is that from?
Oh.
Okay, what happened when you were 5 during that time? What is
Mhm.
reminiscent of this feeling, and connecting it in that way.
Yeah. And I think it's important too is to making those connections between emotions and bodily sensations because oftentimes I think that when people are go through traumatic experiences that they get this massive disconnect, right? This
Yeah.
so just bringing it in on a much like I don't say lower level, but a different level is, when I
Mhm.
was doing like process groups, we'd always start the group with like what emotion is present and where do you feel that in your body, and then we would do some type of grounding experience and then do a process
Mhm.
group, do check-ins and check-outs and such. And I think it was really beneficial for people to start making that connection between today I'm feeling anxious and in my body, like it's a burning sensation in my chest or whatever it might be. Yeah,
Mhm.
cool. So I want to talk about psychedelic assisted therapy. like I'm so
Yes.
stoked I've been holding back. So this is something that's really intriguing to me. And for anyone that's like not tracking it all, like this is coming now to the forefront of therapy is the use of psychedelics in therapy. And some of the psychedelics that you may see in therapy today would be like MDMA, right? Like also commonly called ecstasy, psilocybin, sometimes called magic mushrooms. You'll have like plant-based medicine of ayahuasca, ibogaine, to name a few. Ketamine, is ketamine considered a psychedelic? There's ketamine therapy as well. Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, there are different levels of all of
Yeah,
this,
yeah.
right? Ketamine is at least like throughout the United States, that is what is legal,
Mm-hmm.
completely legal, right? So that is what people are mostly using right now. Ketamine is considered a dissociative. MDMA is more considered an entheogen, and psilocybin is more of a psychedelic, right? But they all kind of fit under this umbrella of psychedelic medicine. Yeah, and MDMA, I'm sure, is in like trial 3 for FDA to be
Yeah.
approved and everything. Psilocybin right now, I think, is being used in Oregon. So everything is kind of moving, well, quickly now, but it's been a very slow process. But I think more and more is coming up, and these substances are being seen as a lot less taboo to use in therapeutic for therapeutic purposes. So it's
Mm-hmm.
just like really cool and blowing up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah, and I think well, some of it's being fast tracked, and this is the part where I'm like, I feel like a bad podcast host, where I'm like, I should have done my research, but I think MDMA possibly and psilocybin. I can't remember if it's MDMA or psilocybin. One of those like got the coveted FDA like breakthrough therapy or breakthrough drug and has is getting fast tracked. I've heard 2024. Nationwide that there'll be a legalization of
Hmm.
it's either MDMA or psilocybin. That's where I should have done my research. I'll put it in the show notes. I'll put a link in there so we can get some information out.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, MDMA has always been like the one where, like, if you've heard of MAPS,
yep,
yeah, I cannot tell you what it stands for right at
it's
this
okay.
moment, but like MAPS has been really the forefront and like the grandmother, if you will, of trying to really push psychedelics and push the
Hmm.
research and show that like this is great for trauma therapy. And that,
Yeah,
and it's been, yeah. So I would say that probably MDMA is being fast tracked, although psilocybin is like coming into the picture right now.
yeah. And so,
Mhm.
talk us through like what would a typical like modal or sessions look like? I mean, because I don't want to give anyone the impression that's listening as a like this is the magic pill. Like, yeah, oh yeah, you just go see your therapist and they give you some
Right.
MDMA and they're like, hey,
Yeah.
you're good, like have a good trip, or what have you. So it's like from the little bit of like what I do know is like it's not the whole therapy. Like it's not just this. Like there's so much more to it. Like it may only be like, and you have to correct me if I'm wrong. I'll just let you tell for a second. Is like that it will be like maybe one session out of 8 where you'll actually ingest any type of psychedelics. Am I correct in thinking that? Like it's psychedelic assisted therapy, but at the same time, it's not the main focus of the therapy. Does that make sense? Am I correct in thinking that?
Yeah.
It's not just I'm
So,
not just going to a therapist and taking mushrooms every day for a month.
right. Yeah. So, like, integration is going to be the most important part of these sessions, right? So, yes, the substance sessions are important where you are having the experience and you're talking things through, and, whatever's happening, your inner healing intelligence is coming up, and the therapist is kind of being there with you and not guiding you in any way necessarily, but helping you deepen into what's coming up.
Hmm.
um, that's important. But integration, all of the sessions after and in between the substance sessions are where things are being applied,
Hmm.
right? So that's a huge part where we're continuing to deepen your awarenesses from those substance sessions, and seeing like how we could bring that into your life now and moving forward, and really really digging those concepts in for you.
That's cool. It's really exciting. I've I've talked to
Yeah.
a few people that have had some experiences with like plant-based medicine retreats, and like people I've talked to are like it was life-changing, and they are
Hmm.
still feeling the positive effects of what they experienced there. And
Hmm.
so yeah, it's really exciting to see it come on. I know it's like it's has a much higher rate of success and efficacy rate than like treatment as usual, which I think treatment
Hmm.
as usual right now is probably talk therapy and some type of pharmacology. But
Hmm.
yeah, so
Yeah.
it's really yeah, I think it's really cool. I hope it continues, and yeah, because the world needs it, right? We need a lot of healing. There's a lot of stuff going on. Um,
Hmm.
yeah. So, as a therapist, and as a social worker, I know self-care is like a big part of it, right? Because you're day in and day out, having vicarious trauma through clients and such. So, how do you take care of yourself? Like, how does Feliz stay good?
Hmm. Yeah, well, I throw weights, like you said. Um, I exercise quite a bit, but because that's what feels good for me, and that's what gets me centered and, in my body and feeling good. Um, Other sorts of things that are really important to keep mind of if you're finding that you're a bit sensitive to energy, or like, yeah, you're experiencing all this vicarious trauma, like you need to protect what is in this versus what's theirs, right? So that you're not taking it on, because that could be hard.
Hmm.
So it is practicing, kind of doing these sort of visual practices with meditation or before sessions or whatever, of just protecting your energy, and what is yours stays there and what is not stays outside of you,
Hmm.
right? And sometimes you just have really hard sessions, right? You hear some heartbreaking, horrific things, right? And it just seeps in a little bit, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
And at the end of the day, it's like, okay, or sometimes even in between sessions, like I'm gonna smudge myself with some Palo Santo or something like that, just to like clear it out. But other things like meditation has been really awesome, like either in between sessions, for like a few minutes if possible, or at the end of the day coming home and just like being in my own sort of energy field, being with
Hmm.
myself. um just kind of, yeah, that whole thing, that sort of solitude within me has been
Yeah.
really helpful as well. Yeah, and
Um,
also talking to people.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. What about have you done anything with ice or steam, or are you a fan of changing temperatures?
I am so cold just all the time. So the cold plunge and stuff, that's a little harder for me. Although, like, I was in like a horse trough with shards of ice for a whole minute at one point, and I was totally calm somehow. I'm not a huge fan of like the cold plunge, whatever, but I sit in the sauna and meditate every morning after the gym,
Yeah.
for like 20 minutes, and that works for me.
That's awesome. Yeah, very cool. And you mentioned meditation. Are you also doing any type of breath practice? Like, is there any breath work going on there? Do you do any type of that? It's okay. You can say no.
I I don't myself, but I've been to some breathwork like workshops, and they've been really amazing. They're kind of difficult too,
Mm.
but
Mhm.
I've had really good experiences with them for sure. But I'll incorporate some breathing, but not like breath work in the term of like you're saying.
Yeah, yeah, cool. Well, that's amazing. Yeah. So those are all good things. Like, hey, throw the weights around, look at temperature stuff. Yeah, maybe get a meditation practice if you're at home. It's not too difficult. I
Yeah.
offer up lots of resources for that. Um,
Uh-huh.
I've had a daily
Writing
meditation
is
practice
great.
for a long time. Let's say again, writing.
Sorry, yeah, writing's awesome.
Yeah, journaling. Yeah. I've tried to pick up honestly, I've tried to pick up a like a journaling habit, but it just I don't know, it just never sticks. I don't know. I
Mhm.
think I'm okay with what I do. Like everyone's got their own little recipe, but I do encourage folks to like treat self-care like a buffet, like try everything out and see like what you like and go back for seconds, and the stuff you really
Yeah.
like get a take-home platter of that, you know? And then don't be surprised, like I don't know if your experience has been anything like mine, but like mine has changed over the years too. Like one thing used to really work and now it's kind of like, man, it kind of falls flat after a while, so I try something else. I think trying new things, that's another thing I should add onto the self-care repertoire, is like get out and try something new. Um,
Hmm.
and that's pretty good for me too. So with that said, let me ask you, like, have you what has been the latest thing that you've taken on in your in your life to help you deal? Is there anything that we didn't mention that you got into? Rock climbing,
Um,
axe throwing, wrestling bears, or is there anything in there?
yeah. So I go to this sweet little writing group every week, actually, that my partner hosts, and it's just like it's not necessarily poetry, but it's like just getting like your pen to paper, having a prompt or something that jumps out to you from a poem, and then you just
Hmm.
writing whatever comes to mind, right? And most of the it's in a group, and what happens is like it's basically like a little process group where people are just sharing this raw emotion and experience on paper, and it
Huh.
could also be really funny, whatever, but you're just showing up and being held in this way, and it's like really therapeutic, actually.
That's
So that's
awesome.
new for me. Yeah.
That's cool. I thought you were gonna say
Mhm.
like you write, and then they're like, all right, then the timer ends, all right, now pass your paper to the left, and then everyone like reads each other's papers or something.
No, you just share your own and
Yeah, nice. That's cool.
yeah,
That's
it's cool.
important. Yeah, awesome. So I think we've been going at it for, I don't know, like close to an hour. I'm so bad with keeping time. And last podcast I did, I used the timer app like in Zoom, and then I didn't realize like that it put a clock like right on the screen and it stayed there. So now I got a video with like this big clock, like this countdown. It's like it's
Oh,
kind of
that's so
anxiety
funny.
provoking. But yeah. So as we do here on Cognitive Fitness Coach Podcast, is we always end the podcast with the billboard question. And the billboard question loosely is that you can have a billboard in the world that billions of people will see. Um, you can have a quote on that billboard from somebody, or a saying from yourself, or an idea, or an image, or what have you. What would your billboard say?
Yeah. So you were saying earlier, before we started recording, how like you wouldn't tell people about the billboard question, and I was thinking like, oh, I wish you didn't tell me,
Oh
right?
no.
Because I would be curious of what would just come to mind, because now I had time to like think about it, and I was like, I actually didn't really come up with anything. I came up with a bunch of things that might, that feel important to me, right? So like some things that are important to me of like are like, you are always in choice. You always have choices in your life, right?
Mm,
A lot of people feel trapped. Um, all that you are is okay, that kind of stuff.
mm.
But ultimately, what I kind of just whittled down to was we are all humans. Be fucking kinder. That's it.
I love it. Yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah, everyone just if you can't, yeah, yeah, I can do that today. I think everyone can do
Yeah.
that today. Just be a little
Just be
kinder to the
kinder.
world.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So I'm like, yeah, I feel like it reminds me of the saying of something along the lines of like, like you don't know what anyone's going through, and the fact of the matter is like we're all going through something. Everyone's going through something. Um,
Hmm.
Yeah, it's funny as you mentioned, like going back, I went back and forth about I tell people about the billboard question, I don't tell people about the billboard question, and I appreciate you bringing it up that you didn't want to know, and some people wanted to know. So now I need to foster, I need to foster self-determination, and I'm just going to start asking people, do you want to know what the billboard question is before I tell them? So some
Right.
people might be like,
Yeah.
no, no prompts. Other people are like, send me a list of questions. I'm like, yeah, I don't have that.
Right. Like I was totally down with like when I asked you, do I need to prepare for anything? And you're like, here's just some things we might talk about, but like you're
Yeah.
good. I'm like, great. Let me just speak from whatever's here, and that'll
Mhm.
be awesome.
Yeah, yeah, we definitely keep it loose here for sure. Which yeah, it's good. I just like to see how things unfold and it's all good.
Yeah,
This podcast went exactly the way it was supposed to. I'm a firm believer in that.
for sure.
And I think it was really good too. I think it was excellent. And I really appreciate you coming on and sharing your experience and being so vulnerable and opening up, about your personal experience and such, and then talking to us about therapy. I think it was educational, and I hope people got a lot out of it. So I appreciate it.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you so much for inviting me to, hang out with you and just like talk around some of these topics. It's been so nice like knowing you, and it's been really nice to reconnect with you in this way.
Yeah, absolutely. Cool. I appreciate it, Filiz. And I'm going to
Yeah.
stop the recording somehow. There it is.